which is a farmer panel. I'm very pleased. We've got a great group of farmers, very diversified systems from around the states. And we made a special for this conference, videos of each of these farmers on their farm. They're 3 minutes in length. So our format will be, for each of these 4 farmers, you're going to see a presentation of their video, and then we'll see them providing some remarks. And that will allow us to get through and see some of the work that they're doing on their farms. So the farmers are going to be Johnny Hunter, who's in Southeast Missouri, Kate Lambert up in Northern Missouri, Liz Graznik in Central Missouri, and then Cecil Harness from Northeast Missouri. So we'll start with Johnny's video, again, a 3-minute video. And by the way, all these videos were shot just in the last couple of weeks. So you're going to see their farms as they kind of look right now, including some of the cover crops growing on their farms. And then Johnny will give some live remarks to you. So can just get the video going here.
I'm Johnny Hunter. I'm a 3rd-generation family farmer from Dexter, Missouri. I'm the president of Castor.
Sorry about that. Rob, would you mind unmuting?
Through a lot of research and a lot of reading, a lot of talking, a lot of conferences, that the biological component to your soil is extremely important. It's that biology that's making all of this work. The 3 pillars of soil fertility. You've got physical fertility, you've got chemical fertility, and you've got biological fertility. As farmers, we spend a lot of time focused on chemical fertility. That's NPK, micros. That's really what the industry has pushed us toward. And we kind of understand physical fertility, but biological fertility has been, in my opinion, on our farm, was being completely neglected. I'm not gonna lie, it was a struggle. We farm in the Boot Hill in Missouri. This is what we call the Delta. I saw benefits immediately. The soil out here prior to covers and no-till was very prone to crusting over and getting really kind of hard and baked out. The first year of covers took all that away. And, the next thing I noticed is that when we were irrigating, it took longer for the irrigation water to get from one end of the field to the other, but we were finally soaking that water all the way across the bed. There's a lot of trips we were not making anymore. There was a lot of equipment we got to get rid of. There was a lot of tractor driving that kind of went away. And, a lot of your cover croppers will tell you, you got to quit that recreational tillage. And that's kind of what we did. We cut all that out. And so it's less diesel. It's less repairs and maintenance. It's less everything. Cover crops aren't new. Go back a couple of generations and you talk to the old timers. And, tell them, hey, I'm planting some vetch and some rye. And they'll say, oh, yeah, we used to do that. A lot of people go back to, well, how much does it cost? How much do these cover crops cost? And I think that is a terrible question. I think you should ask yourself, what is it costing you to farm the way you're farming? What's it costing you when your soil is running out into the ditch? What's it costing you when the fertilizer you paid for is no longer in the field? The cost of cover crop pales in comparison to what we're losing. Once you lose your topsoil, it's gone and ain't coming back. And so figure out what that costs first and then come talk to me about cover crop seed. The number one thing you can do is educate yourself about what you're getting yourself into and surround yourself with people that can help you.
Okay, sorry we lost the very beginning of that video on sound. We will be posting all these videos on our website. And Johnny, I want you to be able to get to your live remarks, so we'll go ahead rather than replaying the video and start with that. So go ahead, Johnny, when you're ready.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks to everybody who's joining us today. Thank you, Kelly, for pulling all this together. I think my first slide, Rob, can you go back one? Or was this the first one?
This is the first one I have.
Okay, understood. So I'm Johnny Hunter. I'm the president of Castor Incorporated. Our company was founded in 1954. We're producers of rice and soybeans in Southeast Missouri. We're also rice millers. We're also heavily involved in sales and distribution of our Castor Farms brand. We also have interest in trucking and logistics, land development, and we have about 10 full-time employees. Go ahead, Rob. Here's kind of where we're located in the world. We're down in the Boot Heel, the Delta. And the reason, I think it's important that, everybody understands, you're going to hear a lot of people talk today, and you're going to see that we're all from different parts of the state. And what's important to know is that soil health and cover crops, they can work no matter where you're at. My practices, what's working for me, might not be working for people up in northern Missouri or out by Joplin, but you've got to find your own system and you got to make it work for you. But that's our little corner of the world. Go ahead. A little bit about me. I'm 39, third generation farmer. Studied at Mississippi State. I studied at Southeast Missouri, still awaiting graduation, unfortunately. I'm a semi-avid outdoorsman. What does that mean? That means if I don't feel like going and the weather's crappy, I don't go. I like, duck hunting, upland bird fishing. I am an aviation enthusiast, and I'm a recovering farm equipment enthusiast. Go ahead, Rob. So, what I want everybody to understand today is, the correlation between cover crops and soil health. The goal should not be cover crops. Cover crops are a tool in the toolbox. They're a thing we can do to start moving us towards a more healthy soil, more sustainable way of farming. So in the video, you heard me talk about kind of the 3 pillars of soil health. And I like to always bring this up when I do one of these talks, because I think as farmers, we get way too caught up in the chemical fertility of our soil. Is chemical fertility important? Sure, you need N, you need P, you need K, you need microbes, you need boron, you need all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is even if that's all fine and good, if your biological fertility and your physical fertility are lacking, you've created an inefficient space for your crops to grow. It's through that biology that the efficiency comes into play. I'm not a soil scientist. I'm not going to claim to be. I don't know how the soil works. Couldn't tell you if you put a gun to my head, but I know I'm just smart enough to know that as I improve the biology of my soil, my crops are improving. My soils are improving. We see our organic matter coming up, and we're creating a more resilient soil where we're irrigating less. We're suffering, much, much less erosion than what we have in the past. And so when I look at my farm, I try to look at it holistically. I'm trying to think about it within these 3 confines. And so everything we do, we're asking ourselves, is this improving or, in detriment to one of these 3 pillars? Go ahead, Rob. So these are some kind of where I came from pictures. These are pictures of what I call the good old days. We were very much conventional farmers. We relied on, lots of tillage, lots of bedding, lots of irrigation, lots of everything, lots of trips through the field. The picture on top is actually from my farm. I stole the picture on bottom from the internet, full disclosure, but that's exactly what our farm has looked like. I guess 2012 going back in time. And so go ahead, Rob. The mentality is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We weren't inherently bad farmers doing it this way. We made good crops. We experienced some record level yields. And so it begs the question, why change? Well, as I mentioned in the video, 2012 was one of our big whys. Is when we got the drought down here. I found that I couldn't pump enough water to make a difference. I couldn't put on enough fertilizer to make a difference. We still had a really below average mediocre crop, and I spent more on the crop than I'd ever spent before in my life. And so we realized at that point we had a problem, and we set out on a mission to figure out what that problem was and how we were going to fix it. Go ahead, Rob. So this is us kind of beginning the transition. This was my first corn crop no-tilled into a green cover, and that was spring of 2014. This cover crop, I believe, was rye, vetch, clover, and radishes. And we absolutely had no idea what we were doing. And so it was really a huge learning curve back then. There wasn't a ton of resources out. So I did what I had to do. I went out into the world and I found people that were well-versed in this. I traveled to North Dakota to meet with Jay Fuhrer and the Burleigh County Soil Health team. I reached out to a guy named Ray Archuleta, and Ray mentored me through this process. I reached out to a guy named Dave Brandt, who'd been doing this since the 70s. And so I had a lot of great people help me along. By no means did I figure everything out for myself, but we've certainly had to tweak things through the years to make it fit our program and make it fit our conditions. Go ahead, Rob. Here's some more pictures. Again, this was back in the day. We were 38 inch row beds, furrow irrigated. I'm still furrow irrigated today. I put in more corn and soybean pictures today because, I think my audience is probably more interested in corn and soybeans than rice. There are some rice guys out there. Kudos to you for getting on here today. And so again, we started in, and the goal is just trying to find a rhythm with this new way of farming and this new management system that we had to adopt in order to make this work. These are all really successful pictures. Of course, I'm not going to put my failures on here for everybody to see, but there's been plenty of failures. You don't learn from things going right, you learn from things going wrong. And I've learned a hell of a lot about what can go wrong doing this. Go ahead, Rob. This is us moving to a bigger planter. We bought a John Deere DB60 and put a cover crop roller on it. Bigger is better, right? Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. This was a great tool. We got over a lot of acres a day with this planter. I've since gone back to a 40 foot, 7.5 inch no-till drill. But there's kind of a picture of what life is like out here whenever we're planting into these covers. That was probably soybeans going into rye, oats, and clover, something along those lines. Go ahead, Rob. So, why soil health? Why even bother? I want it because I want more money in my pocket. I'm running a business here. This isn't a non-for-profit. This isn't a hobby for me. I don't have a job in town that pays my bills. This is what pays my bills and what feeds my family. I want my land out of the ditch. My family's worked really, really hard to acquire the farm ground that we have. And so I think it's crying shame when you see that land that's so expensive, so hard to come by, running out into the ditch. I think we take a lot of risk as farmers for what we actually put in our pocket. And I view soil health as a way to mitigate that risk. I think it's important to know, it's very interesting. I heard this one time, how a crop looks without any human intervention is a very good picture of how healthy your soil is. So if you go out there and you plant your corn crop and it doesn't grow off, it looks like crap and it grows up in weeds, you've got an issue. Go ahead, Rob. The big thing I want everybody to walk away with today, if you're contemplating no-till, if you're contemplating soil health or cover crops, know your why. That's the first thing I ask people when they come to me and say, hey, we want to try this. We want to do cover crops. I'm going to ask you why. Why do you want to do that? Know your why. Here's one of mine. Go ahead, Rob. Know your why. Go ahead, Rob. It'll get you to your why not. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time. There's my email address. If you got a question, want to follow up, shoot me an email. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johnny. Again, our process is we're going to go through all the farmer panelists in one shot here, and then we'll have some time at the end. So you can be putting questions in the Q&A button, using that at the bottom of your screen at any time between now and the Q&A session, or even during that session. So there's a little button towards the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. That's the place to type your questions. So you can indicate a question for an individual farmer or for all of them. So our next presentation is going to be from Kate Lambert with Uptown Farms.
My name is Kate Lambert. My husband Matt and I own Uptown Farms here in Linn County, Missouri, and we farm along with his family. We actually started seeding cover only because we needed more grazing acres. That was the primary motivation at that point in time. Didn't think about any of the benefit for the crops. It wasn't for conservation or sustainability. It was because we wanted to have a cow herd and we needed something for them to eat. We were taking the ground that we were renting or that we owned that was in row crop production and seeding cover crop onto it and allowing additional grazing acres 30 days in the fall, 30 days in the spring that we didn't have before that. Within a few years, we really started to notice a difference in what was happening, not on the grazing side, but on the row crop side. And so we started to do more research and started to talk with more people who were using cover crops and started to really recognize a lot of the long-term and short-term benefits that come with using cover crops. We functioned for years in agriculture thinking that losing dirt was just part of farming, right? That erosion was going to happen and that organic matter was going to deplete. And what we have actually found is that with the use of cover crop, we can not only increase our organic matter, but we can actually build soil. We can see visible evidence that the soil is not only staying in place, but that our organic matter is increasing. When you pick soil up, whether you're scooping into it or just being able to look at that soil profile, you can visibly see the difference and what that looks like now to what it looked like 10 years ago. Visibility in the health of the crop really is most evident on harsh years. When we have those big rainfall events, when we have a drought, those are the times that we can really see the health of the soil. A few years ago, we were experiencing a pretty severe drought right here in the area, and we were able to keep good color in our crops for 2 weeks plus, longer than what a lot of other crop in the area was. What those cover crops are doing when they're shooting tap roots down deep into that soil. They're accessing nutrients that are down there and then bringing them back up to the surface where our cash crops can reach them. They're breaking up years and generations worth of compaction and are allowing our root systems to develop more naturally and in a stronger, healthier way. You've got University of Missouri, you've got farmers all over that are doing these practices, that there's local information that you can access online. There's people you can go and talk to that are doing the things you want to try. And that makes a huge difference when you can go out and you can talk to people that are in similar situations that you are. I think where we're sitting right now in agriculture, specifically in row crop production, is an amazing mix of old traditions combined with new technology and new data and new ways to capture and analyze that data. We have found that cover crops and no-till really do make for a stronger bottom line. Now it's going to look different, right? We might not have the highest yielding corn or the highest yielding soybeans, but when we sit down at the end of the year and we look at input cost, we look at trips across the field, we look at time, and we really analyze that bottom line, these practices are profitable.
So again, these videos were shot just a couple of weeks ago. You're seeing pretty recent shots from the farms, and we'll go ahead with Kate's remarks at this point.
My name is Kate.
Hello, my name is Kate Lambert. My husband Matt and I farm up in the north central part of the state in Linn County. The actual address of the farm is Laclede, Missouri. Our boys go to school in Brookfield, and the headquarters of our farm is in Brookfield. So we claim Brookfield probably just as much as we do Laclede, but we're up here in the north central rolling hills of Missouri. To give you a little background on our farming operation, my husband is a 6th generation family farmer. He came back to the farm after graduating college from Northwest Missouri State and started his own operation alongside miles west of Chicago in DeKalb County, Illinois, Met my husband at a sheep show in Laramie, Wyoming, and followed him down. Even though I was familiar with production agriculture and graduated college with a degree in ag business, I knew very little about production agriculture until I found we now have 2 boys on the farm with us, Mace and Meyer. They're ages 10 and 7. And a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis around here is in the hopes that this operation is able to bring them back if and when they choose to come back to the farm when they are old enough. I will tell you a little bit about what it is that we do here. We have got row crop, cash crops of corn and soybeans, do a little bit of wheat, some alfalfa hay, and some grass hay. We have got a commercial herd of red Angus mama cows, predominantly a cow-calf operation, although we do feed a few calves out now that we sell direct to consumer. We have got a registered flock of Dorper sheep, a very small registered flock of Dorper sheep that is primarily my boys' operation as they get more involved in 4-H and showing. And then we've got a commercial flock of Dorper sheep as well. Majority of those we're selling lambs through the sale barn, but we are starting to sell more direct market as we grow that avenue of our business as well. And then in the month of October, we do a seasonal and very small corn, maize, and pumpkin patch that really gives us an awesome opportunity to open the farm up to our community here and engage with people in a different way. So I will talk a little bit about the sustainability practices on our farm and what we use to look at when we're going to implement these practices. Now, my father-in-law implemented no-till back in the 90s. So when Matt and I came back to the farm, everything was just no-till because in all honesty, that was all Matt knew. He was born in 1986 and his father transitioned to no-till in the early 90s. So Matt honestly doesn't ever remember tillage or any type of plowing happening on the farm. So no-till was just the way that we knew and the way that he continued his operation alongside his dad. But he did want to bring back cover crops after doing some research. Now, our primary reason for starting with cover crops is different than a lot of people because we were primarily driven by the need for additional grazing acres. When we came back to the farm, grazing acres were really hard to come by. Commodity prices were driving a boom in acres being torn out of grass and planted to soybeans. And so finding acres to graze mama cows on was becoming more and more challenging. Our solution to that was to go ahead and start planting cover on the cash crop acres that we were managing to get some additional grazing acres both in the fall and the spring. That is still one of the primary drivers or primary benefits of our cover crop usage to this day, is being able to graze those additional acres. Now, when I talk about practices that we implement, whether it's new technology that we bring in or it's practices such as cover crops or even a new piece of machinery, it's got to meet these 3 things. It's got to be profitable, it's got to be beneficial, and it's got to be practical. We can talk in theory all day long about things that will work well and will have great benefit, but oftentimes they're not profitable or they're not practical. And likewise, we can look at things that are maybe practical, but not profitable. So when we bring in solutions to being sustainable and to being climate smart on our operation, they have got to meet all 3 of those things. To give you an update on what our current practices look like for cover crops, the first thing I'll tell you, like any business, we have to be adjustable. We are oftentimes at the mercy of Mother Nature. So what we plan to do on January 1st is often very different than what actually happens. But anybody that's familiar with Missouri agriculture is very familiar with that reality. Now, when it comes to planting, we don't have a real set plan on how we will plant. We will plant green if that makes sense for that particular field and the particular weather that we have coming. We will terminate and then plant. We have even planted corn into growing triticale before. So we don't feel very limited in that. We're very flexible when it comes to how we will plant a crop into cover, whether we're going to terminate prior, several weeks prior, whether we're going to terminate a few days prior, whether we're going to wait, plant green, and terminate after the fact. Again, the weather and timing just dictates a lot of that. Our preferred cover crop is triticale. We used to use several mixes, the 6-way and the 8-way mixes, but it seemed like obviously there's additional costs associated with that. With so much winter kill, we have just opted and moved sort of away from that. We know there's a lot of benefit to having that biodiversity in the cover crop that we see down. But for us in practical, going back to that profitable practicality, seeding a single cover crop is where we have found to gain the most benefit or the most bang for our buck. Our preferred method is drilling, but again, that is heavily influenced by timing of the year and when we get the crop out. We will aerial apply if the year is right for it and time allows. We will also frequently broadcast just with the fertilizer buggy and get cover crops spread that way. But again, our preferred method, if the timing allows, is to drill triticale. Now we like triticale over cereal rye because of the tonnage. Again, we're grazing a lot of these acres and we can just get additional tonnage out of that triticale that we don't necessarily see with the cereal rye. Other than that, there's a lot of consistencies in terms of what it does for soil compaction, what it does for organic matter, and the way that we can manage it in the spring when we need to get cash crop in. So it's really just that tonnage that is the primary benefit that we like to, why we prefer triticale over the cereal rye. Now, I just told you all of our preferred methods, and you look at where 2021 puts us at. 2021, we've got all cereal rye on the ground. That was really just what was available and what we could afford. And so that changes year to year in terms of what we can actually get. And what makes the most sense. So cereal rye was most accessible to us this year. Most of what is on the ground this year was put on with fertilizer, just broadcast with fertilizer again because of the funny and late harvest. That is where we ended up. But we did get some drilled on, and we're looking at a fairly decent stand. We're getting a pretty dry up here. We had a little bit of rain yesterday, but not enough to equate to anything. We're getting fairly dry up here, although the weather has been favorable in terms of the temperatures for establishing that cover crop. We could certainly use some more moisture. When I look at our future goals, honestly, we're going to continue to adapt as we learn more information. Nothing stays the same year to year. We see more information from farmers that are doing different things in university research. But one of our main focuses right now is on nitrogen application. We're still relying heavily on anhydrous, and I'm sure you have heard what anhydrous has done. I think the most recent quote we heard in our area for anhydrous was 1,500 a ton on that. And so you can understand not only from a sustainable mindset, but from a profitability mindset, why we might want to be looking at different uses of different applications of nitrogen. So that's looking at using most of our gas, but really trying to find different ways to do that. Again, for sustainability purposes and just for general resiliency purposes, and trying to figure out what is best for the operation as a whole. Again, I always try to highlight this. The decisions that we make on our farm here are really focused not just on, obviously we want to be good stewards of what God has blessed us with. We know that very few people are blessed with the opportunity to be living and working in production agriculture. And we truly want to be good neighbors. We want to be good community members and good stewards of the resources that we've been blessed with. But also we want to make sure that we can create a business that is resilient and adaptable and here long term. And ultimately that is here should our boys choose to come back. So all of our decisions, what we do in the short term and the long run, really fall back to that ultimate goal. Diversity is huge for us, and you can see just a few of the things, the ways that we try to diversify our income stream here, and the ways that helps not only to diversify our income stream, but lots of these direct-to-consumer things that we get to do, and opening the farm up for community members during October has really helped to build our relationships in the community and really helped to give us a seat at the table and a voice in the conversation when we might not otherwise have had it. So we take a lot of pride in being able to use our farm to build those relationships as well. And we do as much as we can to share our story with producers who are considering practices along the things that we're already implementing, and try to provide as much information as we can to help others, as well as consumers and people who just have questions about agriculture in general. So with that, I will thank you for the time. I am available. You can reach out and find us on social media, Instagram and Facebook at Uptown Farms. Otherwise, I'm sure my contact information will be made available if I can be of any resource or help in the future. Thank you.
So thanks, Kate, for those remarks. And we're going to go ahead, if I can get the screen to advance. There we go. So our next speaker is Liz Graznik, who farms in central Missouri. And again, we've got a short video of Liz, and then she'll giving some remarks.
My name is Liz Graznak, and we are on Happy Hollow Farm, which is about 45 minutes outside of Columbia, Missouri, in northern Montauk County. I tell people that I grow literally every vegetable that you can think of, except for sweet corn and potatoes. There's a lot of different things that grow really well in mid-Missouri, and I grow a lot of them. Some things that are more uncommon and some things that are really common. I started the farm as a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture Farm. I have X number of members that join at the beginning of the season and they pay up front. And I know that I have to provide X number of vegetables every week during the course of the season to that number of members. I have members that have been members for 11 years. The entire time I've been farming, I have watched their kids born and grow up. And they've watched my kids be born and grow up. In the organic farming world, I rely much less on off-farm inputs to grow the produce that I'm growing and the flowers that I'm growing than I do on-farm inputs. And I'm very concerned about providing really nutrient-dense and healthy produce. The only way you can get that is from having really healthy soils. And cover crops are the best way to build healthy soils. The amount of ground that I'm growing on is really small. We generate a lot. We pump out a lot of food off of this tiny little plot of ground. I cover crop as much as I possibly can. If there's a space that's open and I'm not gonna use it for 3 months, it's gonna have a cover crop on it. This small section of this field, field D, that's right behind me, has oats planted in it. We harvested out of this field until probably mid-June. An early planting of broccolini and broccoli rabe. And then I tilled it in, worked the ground, and then I bare fallowed it for 2 months and then seeded this cover crop. In my farming world, everyone cover crops as a source of nutrition for the vegetables that they're going to be growing, as a source of soil building. Sometimes it's a source of disease suppression, letting a field just rest for an entire season. I mean, when you see a big field of a really healthy cover crop, it makes me happy. Because I know the benefit that is going to happen later from that field.
All right, so Liz, you can go ahead and share more of your story about your farm and some of your use of cover crops and experiences.
Great. Do you have my PowerPoint, Rob?
Actually, I don't at the moment, but we'll work on getting that up while you go ahead and get started. So,
okay. So I will just start by saying that unlike our previous two presenters, I am a first generation farmer, and I wish that I had the knowledge and experience that they bring to the table. I've only been farming now for 11 growing seasons, full-time here on my farm, Happy Hollow Farm. And it's a very small plot of ground. I have probably about 11 acres in produce and cover crops and flowers at any given time during the year. In the PowerPoint, I have some pictures of the farm and some pictures of, I guess, the various different fields and how the farm's laid out and how the farm has grown over the last 11 years. I started the farm as a CSA farm, and two years in, started selling at our local farmers market in Columbia, Missouri. which actually this summer was voted the best farmers market in the country, which was very exciting for us. I'm super proud of our farmers market. We have a really fabulous market full of really great farmers. And I still have the CSA. My CSA members are sort of the backbone of the farm, and then selling at farmers market. And then I also sell some wholesale to restaurants and a couple of grocery stores that are in Columbia. Any luck, Rob?
Kelly is loading your slides here in just a second.
Okay, great. Great. We actually are ending this week is the last week of my 32-week CSA season, and we harvested a bunch of produce yesterday, and a little bit we're getting out of the fields this morning, and then we're going to be washing and packing boxes that are going to be delivered to Columbia tomorrow. We have that going on this morning.
Liz, do you see the slides up?
Yes, I sure do. Thank you, Kelly.
Great. Go ahead.
So, Rob, are you advancing the slides?
I'll do it for you, Liz.
Okay, great. You want to go ahead? So yeah, this is great. The whole farm is 82 acres, and we are in northern Montauk County. I'm up to about 11 acres in field production and vegetables at this point. And I have added a number of high tunnels over the years through the NRCS Equip program, as well as just, on my own. And I'm also growing under a lot of, we call them caterpillar tunnels. And I think, as very similar to what the previous presenters mentioned, in vegetable production, we are also very, very constrained. I don't know if that's the right word, or limited, but all of our planting is very much weather dependent. And if you are farming, you know that. And when I am constantly trying to keep up with many succession plantings of the various different crops that we grow, Missouri weather can sometimes be pretty difficult to work around. And so I have been adding more caterpillar tunnels, which are movable. I can put them up over a crop and then take them down when that crop is finished, and dismantle that tunnel so that then maybe I could put an entire field into a cover crop. But growing under tunnels really allows me to, number one, raise a much nicer, I guess, less blemished and just nicer vegetable. And it also allows me to extend the season both in the spring and well into the winter months. I mean, we've had a really very beautiful fall this year, which has been great, but I will continue to grow and have many different types of greens and vegetables throughout the winter months because of the high tunnel structures that I'm currently growing in. We do have a small orchard and harvest some apples off of that orchard, but not a ton. You want to advance to the next slide there? And then, yeah, just a tiny little bit of background. I went to college and grad school, and in 98, when I was in grad school, that's how I actually was introduced to the concept of CSA. And that farm had a work requirement. And so I spent a fair bit of time on the farm, and I had never been exposed to anything like that growing up. Our produce came from a farmer's market or from the grocery store. And I just fell in love with the entire idea of having a more direct connection and relationship to the people that were growing the food that I was eating. And I thought that, man, I think I would like to do that. And so here I am, many, many years later. I didn't have family land. And so when I moved back to Columbia, which is where I grew up, I started working at a garden center in Columbia and really had a great experience there. And I'm still good friends with the owners of that garden center. And that job allowed me to build up enough capital and also enough borrowing power to be able to borrow money to buy the farm that my wife and 2 kids that we now live on. And I started farming, I guess, in 2010. And yeah, so now I'm 11 years in, and like Johnny said, you know, this is my full-time job. This is my career. This is what I do for a living. And raising produce year round is what pays my bills. Okay, let's move forward. Yes, so I think we talked about that a little bit in the beginning when we were waiting for the PowerPoint to come up. But really, most everything that I've learned in the time that I've been farming, I've learned from other people that are doing what I'm doing by attending conferences and workshops and getting to know and making friends in the organic farming world. You know, everything that I've learned from cover crops, I've learned from people that have been doing this a lot longer than I have been. So I think let's go forward. And, you know, like you've heard from the last 2 presenters, soil health is key to growing beautiful vegetables, really any crop. So that's what I really focus on. It's hard sometimes to keep that at the forefront of my mind and not let the kale crop or the tomatoes or whatever that specific vegetable is that I'm harvesting and planting right now. You know, it's really easy for me to make a super direct connection to the head of lettuce that I'm going to harvest and how much I'm going to make when I sell that head of lettuce compared to this field of oats that I planted this fall in September. And I'm not going to be able to harvest a cash crop out of that field until probably the middle part of next summer. But I also know, and I have to constantly remind myself that the soil where that crop of oats is growing right now is going to produce a much better, more prolific, you know, probably higher yielding crop of cucurbits, which is what's going to be planted in that field next summer. And so it's something that I have to constantly have in the back of my mind. I think we could go forward to the next slide. Yeah. You know, when I first started, Kelly, can you advance like to the next, maybe first or second? So, I mean, we did talk about this and you've heard about this also from the other panelists. Timing is really critical. And for me, being able to get say this field that you're looking at right now. So I've got rye and hairy vetch in a field right now. And that field is going to have my summer planted for fall harvest crop of brassicas next year. So the 2nd or 3rd week of July, I'll be planting broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage and Napa cabbage and probably kale in that field. And I'm going to have a really short window of time that's dictated by the weather, probably starting mid-May to June, to get that field mowed down, tilled in, and prepped in order for me to be able to plant the 2nd week of July. And yeah, timing is so critical and very, very much dictated by the weather. And you cannot miss your window, which is, yeah, it's challenging sometimes. And I do really, I guess I would say I really do focus on which cover crop is going to benefit me the most compared to the cash crop that is going to follow that cover crop. So, for example, the rye hairy vetch mix that I plant in a field prior to a fall brassica crop, that has, that mixture works really, really well, not only with the timing, but also with the nitrogen capture and weed suppression for that following brassica crop. But for example, that mix wouldn't work so well specifically because of timing, especially if I needed to use that field in the early spring, because then I wouldn't get the benefits of that crop nearly as much as I get them from a later summer planted crop. So for me, there's a lot of juggling, and I have a huge Excel spreadsheet that helps me keep track and helps guide my decision making for which cover crop I'm going to be planting before the cash crop that is actually going to be planted in that field. And I think we move forward. Yeah, so the only other thing to say is that because I am smalling on such a small acreage, the space that I have is super limited and it's very, very precious. And so trying to fit maybe a fast growing and fast, easily worked in cover crop, like say buckwheat in the middle of the summer in a very short little window of time, a month to a month and a half to 2 months. I try and do that as much as possible. And the longer term cover crops like this rye and hairy vetch mix or that field that has oats in it, those have to be planned. And I have less room to make a real quick decision on a really small open plot of ground because that cover crop has to be in the ground for a lot longer. But like with a buckwheat cover, literally I could have that in the ground for a month or 2 months and it's still benefiting me and benefiting the soil. So we try and work those in as much as possible too. Sometimes I even underseed like that brassica planting, or in the very beginning you saw we were transplanting garlic, and we just did that a couple of weeks ago, and onions that are going to overwinter. And the pathways in that field, sometimes I will, if we can get the crop in early enough, in the pathways, I will seed a cover crop like an annual ryegrass or buckwheat or even oats. This year we weren't able to get the crop in early enough, and so we just laid down a lot of straw in those pathways. But sometimes in the pathways we'll put in a cover to help with weed suppression and also just to help hold that soil in place. And I think that's it. This is just another shot of the farm and some of the tunnels. And this is a couple of our tunnels, and that's mostly it. You can see there's a lot of straw there. We really do use a lot of wheat straw. And yeah, I guess that's all.
Thanks very much, Liz. I know there's some questions that have been added for you when we get into the question and answer session. So we'll go to our fourth panelist, and then we'll get to the Q&A. So I'm going to share my screen again to bring up Cecil's remarks. And Cecil Harness farms in Northeast Missouri, and we're going to again start with the video and go from there into his live remarks. So first of all, the video.
My name is Cecil Harness Jr. We're here at the family farm, Pike County, Missouri. We are located about 70 miles north of St. Louis, about 20 miles west of the Mississippi River. We are a cow-calf operation along with row crops, involved in farming with my father, Cecil Sr., and my son, Dustin Harness. We don't have a lot of topsoil. Maximum in this area is probably 12 inches, and we were very heavy clay pan soil. My dad, my grandpa always said we're 2 weeks away from a drought. And we are. I mean, if we don't get rainfall, consistent rainfall, we're going to burn up. My dad started going to university-sponsored meetings years ago and kept talking about soil health. And Dad kept saying, well, you need to go to this meeting. You need to go to one of these meetings. Well, he happened to just basically force me to go to one. And I was very blessed. Doug Peterson, David Lamb, and Dave Brandt, who is the guru of cover crops and no-till, were the three speakers. Well, I couldn't have gone to a better meeting. Dave Brandt was, this is how we do it on our farm. This is why it works. Doug Peterson was how you make it work with cows, which I was very interested in. And David Lamb kind of put the science with it, why it worked. And it was really a meeting that just clicked the switch. And I came home and said, yep, it'll work. We just got to change some things about our operation. We made a wholesale change. We completely dropped tillage out of our operation and have gone to a complete cover crop and no-till system since. We're gaining soil structure back. When you get on our fields and walk on them, they feel like a sponge. You don't feel the rock hard like you're walking on a tile floor. 1% organic matter in your soil holds 25,000 gallons of water. 1 inch of rainfall falling on your soil is 25,000 gallons of water. Well, if I improve the structure, the tilth, and organic matter in my soil, that's 1%. That's one more inch of rain that I don't have to have, that my neighbor who's working ground and tilling ground has to have. So you've got two factors. You've got the living part of the plant creating organic matter. Then you've got a mat that's decomposing, creating organic matter. The mat is also shading the soil, so the sun isn't beating down. Your soil temperatures are cooler. We're not getting radical changes in soil temperature. It's more of a consistent, so it's more beneficial to our row crops. Big benefit is the extra pasture for the cow herd. We've changed our cow herd to fit our soils, and the grass type that our soils like to support our cattle are probably a little heavier and a little carrying more weight than they need to, because they've got some excellent pasture. What the cows contribute to the soil is just unbelievable. I think it's the distribution of manure. I think it's the microbial activity you get out of the saliva from the cattle. We've been able to raise the number of cattle in our operation because of the cover crops. There's just a whole bunch of exciting stuff going on. My name is Cecil.
All right, so we're going to switch over to Cecil's live remarks. So Cecil, when you're ready, take it away. Up, you're muted.
Well, just a second.
There, now I can hear you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for Dr. Myers and everybody that helped put this together and is helping put it on. I guess we'll start with me. I'm going to quote some of my favorite people. Ray Archuleta said this. He worked for NRCS for years. He said, we've been following conservation plans for 80 years. It's a patch plan. It helps, but it's not working. We needed to look deeper and further into our system and what we need to do better. David Lamb also had a really good quote that I use quite often. He said, we've attempted to replace the biology with engineering, and that being tillage and chemical engineering. And I don't think that's the answer either. So next slide. Is it a new concept? No, probably not. Stole these both off the internet, so we have full disclosure. Go back to the time of Cleopatra and the Egyptians. The earthworm was considered sacred, and they couldn't kill or move or even touch an earthworm for fear the god of fertility would look unfavorably upon them. Go back to Darwin's times. We're talking about late 1880s. He documented how his stones in his pasture, when he quit tilling the pasture and left it in grass, how the stones were actually becoming smaller, and documented the different soil changes and soil types in his pastures. So we're not talking about new concepts. I think maybe we just forgot some of this stuff. Next slide. Stole this picture off the internet, but I couldn't find a better representation anywhere. This is a perfect example of what our soil look like, and is starting to look like. On the right-hand side, you see soil that has been conventionally tilled over 11 years. On the left-hand side, you see soil that has been no-tilled with no cover crops. This is without cover crops. We've experienced this. The right-hand soil, work it up, get a beautiful seedbed in the spring, plant it, and get one of our fine Missouri 2-inch rain events, and we are out tilling it up again because we have to replant it because we couldn't get emergence because it had crusted and just couldn't break through the crust. So we knew we were doing something wrong, weren't exactly sure what it was, and have kind of found a new path with the cover crops. Next slide. If I could write down an ideal rotation, this would probably be, for our operation, this would be it. It would be corn or milo, your cereal grain, followed by a cereal rye cover crop, implement the cows into the grazing system, followed by soybeans. Well, no cover crop after the soybeans. Typically, we go to wheat that would possibly be grazed early spring by the cows. Following the wheat, we like to go with a 15 to 20 way blend in our wheat stubble. We're on it twice with the cows. Usually we're following fall grazing the summer annuals with the cows. After frost, we're off of it, and then come back in the spring pre-plant to the corn or milo, we're grazing it again. Next slide. I just put this on here so if anybody wants to take a picture of it later, reference it later. This is one of the mixes we are using post-wheat going to corn. You'll notice it includes warm season grass, cool season grass, a warm season legume, and cool season legumes. We feel like this opens our opportunities up for weather variables on emergence of the cover crop. It also opens up variables for our grazing system, where we're not limited to one-shot grazing. Typically with this mix, we're getting 2 to 3 grazings off of this mix. Next slide. Just an example of my post-wheat mix. This was planted July 3rd. We've already moved into it. Pictures taken September 1st. We're grazing this, strip grazing this at 125,000 pounds of beef per acre. Why is that relevant? I want to show you in the next slide and some following slides what it looks like after we mat it down. This is post-grazing, post-frost. Notice that we didn't overgraze the summer annuals. We tried to leave a mat. You can start to see a little bit of green in this picture is starting to, the cool season grasses and cool season cover crops are starting to emerge. Next slide. Post-wheat, post-grazing, post-frost, it's just another picture. It doesn't look like we have a lot of biological activity. This picture was taken on December 2nd, or excuse me, a lot of growth activity, but it's really surprising what that little bit of green on December 2nd looks like the next spring when you're planting into it. Next slide. This is our post-wheat mix. When we know where we don't have fence or water, we know we can't get on there with the cows. It's a little simpler mix, but it works really well for us. We're going into this, planting green into all these covers, but this will be planting corn into this the following year. Next slide. Okay, here's our post-wheat going to corn, post-frost. To look at it, it looks like we don't have any covers, no living roots in the soil. Did all of it die with the frost? You know, it doesn't look very alive, but it's really surprising. And we'll see in the next slide. Go ahead, Dr. Meyer. This is the same field we were just looking at. This is a little close-up of it in the fall. And then this is the same field, me planting corn into it on April 15th. It didn't appear like we had the ground covered like we wanted in the winter, but it was really surprising what it looked like once everything warmed up and started to grow. You're seeing some hairy vetch, and the color in the picture is hairy vetch, and crimson clover is the primary covers that are issuing color in the picture. Next slide. We've got an interesting farm we purchased in 2015, and I just kind of wanted to run down this. It's pretty neat. I drilled wheat into it that fall. It was a mixture. The previous tenant didn't even harvest soybeans because they were so weedy. So we went in and drilled wheat into that. We harvested 97 bushel an acre wheat off of it. I drilled my cover crop mix into it post wheat. We grazed. At that time we weren't seeding the winter covers and the summer covers together. So at that time we blew on with our Hagee. We have a cover crop kit for our Hagee sprayer, and we blew on a cereal rye mix post grazing. And then so we grazed that warm season mix twice. We were able to graze it once, as you see it in the top picture. There is a cow in the top picture if you look closely. And then the second picture is actually the second grazing we were able to get on it. So we did that, came back, planted with the cows, grazed 125,000 pounds per acre. We raised soybeans on it the following year, yielded 57 bushel the acre. Now we're talking about a farm that was completely depleted. It had been grazed, heavily grazed and pastured for probably 50 years with minimal fertilizer. The soil tests are completely, the university soil tests are completely off the board, absolutely depleted, completely. About all it would grow is what I call broom grass. It was in such bad shape. So we went back to wheat and grazing in 18. We had a corn yield of 173 following that mix, and then soybeans in 2020 made 59 bushel to the acre. And we have added no synthetic inputs other than nitrogen for the corn and the chemicals for weed control that our covers aren't helping with. Next slide. So here's an area. I call cereal rye as the simplest cover of all. It's the easiest thing. When somebody asks, how do I start? Find some way to get cereal rye into your mix or into your corn stalks post-harvest. We like to go early. If you see the picture on the left, that's blown on with our Hagee. That's a mixture of cereal rye and radishes. We know probably won't be grazing and probably don't have fencing or water in this field. So that'll be going soybeans the next year. And then you move left to right. That's September post-harvest. You've got the green mat. And then the next picture is May 25th. We're drilling the beans green into the standing rye. And then we're spraying that 3 weeks post-plant. Next slide. We don't use this a lot, but we are starting to use it more. Here's a mix that we use post beans going to corn. It was drilled at 45 pounds the acre. And then we came back and actually drilled some more cereal rye at 40 pounds the acre to thicken it up. Next slide. key resources that I've used, it's kind of like Johnny said, I felt like Johnny and I were talking to each other, basically. A lot of the same people. I didn't do this on my own. I absolutely did not do it. But the things that sold me, talking to Dave Brandt, Ray Archuleta, Dr. Haney, Doug Peterson doing the rain simulator test, you must see it. Look it up on YouTube. Follow these guys on YouTube. They're all on YouTube. You can watch this. You don't have to go to their farms. They do a really good job. Livestock and crops. I really like listening to Gabe Brown, Doug Peterson, Alan Savory, and Jim Garish, who was with the university for quite some time. All excellent resources. Look them all up on YouTube or wherever you can find them, and read everything and listen to everything you can, because there's no exact science to this. I will say the thing I can honestly say about our operation is it's made us better managers. We really have to do a lot more planning as far as when we incorporate the cattle in the grazing system. We're 2 and 3 years out in our planning of our cover crops. No, it's not a set plan. You still have to be flexible, but we really feel like we're starting to get a little bit of a handle on it, and what we're reaping and the benefits of soil structure and organic matter are just completely off the charts. Okay, that should be it.
Thanks, Cecil. Really appreciate those remarks. So at this point, we have some time for questions. We're a little behind schedule, but not too bad. So we'll take about 10 minutes for questions. If you have one, put it in the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. And I'm just going to start working through. Some of them have been posted. We are going to have CCA credits available, by the way. So we'll get you that information here as we go through the program this morning. So we had a question about what was your biggest failure when you started with cover crops? And Johnny, that question was posted while you were talking, so I'll throw that one to you. What would you say your biggest failure was?
You know, the biggest failure, Kate touched on it, Cecil's touched on it, but we were coming at it from a mindset of, you know, when we're ready to plant our cash crop, you know, typically our mindset was nothing. You know, we're going to plant come hell or high water. There's nothing that's going to stand in our way. We start planting rice on April 15th, and by God, that's what we're going to do. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we made is, you know, we weren't going in with enough flexibility. We weren't going in with a plan B, C, D, E, F, G. We had plan A, and when plan A didn't work, well, we just kept forcing plan A. You can't force plan A. You got to be able to pull back, regroup, go on to the next thing, and try again.
Thanks, Johnny. Kate, the next one's for you. How do you terminate the cover crops on your farm?
Yeah, so we use traditional herbicide methods to terminate, and when we terminate just really dictates or is dictated by the weather, and that planting, going right back to what Johnny said, we probably always have good intentions of when we're going to terminate, but it just depends on the weather, whether we're going to do that before planting or we're going to do it after planting. Just depends on if we're wet or dry and how we're getting along. In terms of being able to actually get into the sprayer to get something sprayed and getting planters moved around as well.
And Kate, there was another question asking you to relist your 3 criteria for each practice. If you're able to see that, can you type a response to that one in the Q&A box?
I can,
Great.
Yep.
Okay, I'll go to the next one for Liz. Liz, this one's for you. Considering the size of your farm, and I'm not sure I heard you mention how many acres you do crop. If I remember right, it's around 20 of your 80 acres or something, but what kind of equipment do you use to plant? We saw a transplanter in operation, but also how do you seed your cover crops?
I am only farming about 11 acres at this point,
Okay.
about crop. And I plant cover crops with a spreader seeder, either 3-point hitch PTO driven one if I'm doing a big field, or an over the shoulder hand spreader. And sometimes if it's a really small patch, like in an area that's in pathways between beds, I'll just do it by hand, you know, carrying a 5-gallon bucket.
Thank you. Cecil, I'll bring this next one to you. There was a question about what sorts of soil health testing you're using. And then if we have time, we can go to maybe 1 or 2 of the others. So Cecil, how do you do soil health testing?
90% of my soil health testing is visual, Dr. Myers. We have learned to recognize what we're after and what we're going for, what we're trying to accomplish with the aggregate of the soil. We have used some Haney testing. out of Dr. Haney out of Texas, but 90% of us is just visual soil testing. We've kind of abandoned a lot of the synthetic inputs as far as fertilizer is concerned. So really, if my soil tilth and structure looks better and is improving, that's what we're going with.
Johnny, how about you? What do you use any particular soil health test?
We do. So we use the Kinsey Albrecht method for soil fertility balancing. And like Cecil, we've gotten away from commercial P and K. We're using mostly chicken manure. But what I'm trying to track there is humus. I'm wanting to follow those humus levels. We're targeting a 1% increase in organic matter every 4 years. And so I want to do that to see that my calcium magnesium ratio is right, because we find if our soil isn't balanced in terms of cal mag, then the cover crop's not going to grow off as good as it could, which is then going to further impact our soil health. We have done some Haney testing, and there's a new group called Ag Regen Soil Labs, a guy named Lance Gunderson, who studies under Rick Haney and Liz Haney, and we're going to do some work with them in 22.
Great. Kate, there was a question about when somebody's planting, when you plant green, or really any of the farmers, but when you've planted green, any issues you've run into with the growth of your cash crop when you have planted it green?
We don't have any issue, and again, on a typical year, we don't have any issues with soybeans, and actually planting green is probably our preferred go-to with soybeans. We have planted corn into green growing cover crop, and on small acreage due to weather that we were having that year, and it being the only option that we had. With that, we did 2 40-acre patches that way a couple of years ago in a really wet year. And with that 240s, one of them, we had a beautiful stand, beautiful yield on it. And you would have looked at that and said that was the right way to go. On the other, we ended up having to come back in and replant some of that. So we don't have any real definitive answer as to whether we're going to be able to continue planting green or not for corn, but it is something we'd like to be able to experiment with a little bit more.
Cecil, the next one's for you. Questions about how you apply nitrogen for your corn. And I might add, if you've made any adjustments since you started using cover crops to your nitrogen management, maybe you can mention that.
Sure. Yeah, we are using 100% liquid program. We were going with a small percent, probably a 30 or 40% early pre-plant or at planting with liquid, and then falling with a side dress machine. We've abandoned, and we were anhydrous previous to that, and we completely abandoned that just because we haven't documented, but it has been documented as detrimental to soil health and some of the microbes and stuff that are going on in the soil. So we moved away from the anhydrous. We've gone to 100% liquid program. And I wanted to add to the question earlier just a little bit. I think a lot of things, we hear a lot about aliopaths and allelopathic effect on corn going into these covers. And I really think what we're finding in our operation is a lot of times it's nitrogen tie-up that aliopath gets brought in the conversation, and it has nothing to do with it. I really believe it's more nitrogen tie-up, and it's still a challenge.
Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little. Liz, there was a question about how you terminate cover crops, and specifically, have you tried on your smaller plantings of cover crops using like a silage tarp or other way of being able to no-till control that cover crop termination?
Yeah, on really small sections of ground, yeah, we do use silage tarps some. Like, for example, in that rye hairy vetch patch, that's a pretty big patch. And I'll mow that down with a flail mower, like chop it up as small as I can, and then I'll disc it in, and the soil microbes will make it disappear in 3 to 4 weeks, and then I'll be able to start disking again and get that ground ready for beds that I'm going to be planting the fall brassicas in.
Okay, and there was one more for you, Liz, about how you spread all that straw. You have really nice straw cover in some of those photos. How do you spread that?
By hand.
I figured. All right. Well, I think we've got a few other questions, but in the interest of time and keeping on schedule, we probably better stop there. Kelly, there was interest in having the QR code put back up for the CCAs. What we're going to do is go to a very short break here so that we can start Abby Wick's presentation in about 4 minutes. And what I'm going to do after we let that QR code show for about 30 seconds is replay Johnny Hunter's video, because I know we lost the sound on the first minute or so of that. So we'll play that during break, and then we'll load Abby Wick's slides and start her presentation here in about 4 minutes. So thank you to our farmer panel. That was really informative. Those videos and also these presentations are going to be available on a recorded basis on our website. So really appreciate you participating this morning. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again just to show Johnny's video here, and then we'll get to Abby Wick's presentation in a few minutes.
I'm Johnny Hunter. I'm a third-generation family farmer from Dexter, Missouri. I'm the president of Castor River Farms. We're located in Stoddard County, Missouri, which is in the southeast corner of the Boot Heel of Missouri. Castor River Farms is involved in crop production, rice and soybeans. We mill rice, and we also have a trucking company. One of my big problems out here was we had a lot of compaction, and we had really poor water infiltration. The lion's share of our farm is irrigated, but even with irrigation, we weren't able to irrigate efficiently, and our water was just running from one end of the field to the other. And that was highlighted in 2012 when we had a really severe drought in the Boot Heel. We realized, through a lot of research, and a lot of reading, a lot of talking, a lot of conferences, that the biological component to your soil is extremely important. It's that biology that's making all of this work. The 3 pillars of soil fertility. You've got physical fertility, you've got chemical fertility, and you've got biological fertility. As farmers, we spend a lot of time focused on chemical fertility. That's NPK, micros. That's really what the industry has pushed us toward. And we kind of understand physical fertility, but biological fertility has been, in my opinion, on our farm, was being completely neglected. I'm not gonna lie, it was a struggle. We farm in the Boot Heel in Missouri. This is what we call the Delta. I saw benefits immediately. The soil out here prior to covers and no-till was very prone to crusting over and getting really kind of hard and baked out. The first year of covers took all that away. And, the next thing I noticed is that when we were irrigating, it took longer for the irrigation water to get from one end of the field to the other, but we were finally soaking that water all the way across the bed. There's a lot of trips we were not making anymore. There's a lot of equipment we got to get rid of. There was a lot of tractor driving that kind of went away. And, a lot of your cover croppers will tell you, you got to quit that recreational tillage. And that's kind of what we did. We cut all that out. And so it's less diesel, it's less repairs and maintenance, it's less everything. Cover crops aren't new. Go back a couple of generations and you talk to the old timers and, tell them, hey, I'm planting some vetch and some rye. And they'll say, oh yeah, we used to do that. A lot of people go back to, well, how much does it cost? How much do these cover crops cost? And I think that is a terrible question. I think you should ask yourself, what is it costing you to farm the way you're farming? What's it costing you when your soil is running out into the ditch? What's it costing you when the fertilizer you paid for is no longer in the field? The cost of cover crop pales in comparison to what we're losing. Once you lose your topsoil, it's gone and it ain't coming back. And so figure out what that costs first and then come talk to me about cover crop seed. The number one thing you can do is educate yourself about what you're getting yourself into and surround yourself with people that can help you.